Okay, and we are live again. It is the, what is it, the 9th?
The 9th today, Sunday the 9th.
Welcome back, everybody. This is another episode of Real Coaching with your hosts. My name is Dr. Ayo Olatoye. I'm a consultant in acute medicine and a coach, and my esteemed colleague.
My name is Dr. Lewis Thomas. I'm a GP and a life coach.
And we are your hosts for Real Coaching. And we are live again. We've been going through Iron Man's story arc because we thought it was an interesting character. Even though we both said at the beginning, Iron Man wouldn't be a guy that would be like your friend. He wouldn't be the guy that you would invite to your birthday party or to your barbecue or whatever. But his story arc from essentially self-centered to being the self-sacrificing hero that actually saves everybody is an interesting journey. And today we're talking about Age of Ultron, the next time we see Iron Man after Iron Man 3. So, Lewis, you want to go first and just talk about your summary of the film, and I'll do mine, and then we can see what we can glean from it in terms of coaching tips.
Yeah, sure. So I've just written a little bit of a summary beforehand, so I'm just going to read it out. So basically, the way I see the movie is that Tony sees an opportunity to implement a solution to a problem and decides not to consult with the rest of the team as he doesn't want any opposition. So he's made his mind up and thinks he knows what's best. And that, I think, is pushed by the sense of urgency in that they have the spear weapon for a limited amount of time, and he wants to, implement his strategy from it. So I think that makes him not want any of the prolonged discussions. But after all, I think he feels that he's doing the right thing because he's going to end up saving everyone, and they're all going to thank him anyway. So he thinks that it's doing them a favor by creating this system to protect the planet from outside invaders. But what actually happens is the computer system Ultron identifies the people living on the planet as the real threat and decides that they all need to be wiped out so that Earth can start again and be a safe and nice place to live. So Ultron is basically a problem-solving machine, a lot like Tony, but without any human emotion or attachment. So it kind of leaves me questioning whether this oversight could have been identified if he'd collaborated with the rest of the team. And also, what actually drove him to do it was seeing these visions where the rest of the team, was dead, and it was all his fault. And he kind of created that fear himself. That wasn't reality, but he believed in it so strongly that he basically manifested it into being, almost. So could there have been any intervention between him having that vision and seeing those things and then creating Ultron that would have, stopped that from happening?
That's nice. It's good. There's some I think from my point of view, so if I take a step back and think about the film itself, I liked the film more than I liked Iron Man 3. I really like, because I think one of the things that Marvel does well is it creates good villains. So Ultron, although he does a lot of things, you don't think he's evil in that sense. He's not like going around indiscriminately killing people, or even though he plans to kill everybody. I hope you know what I'm saying. Is like, so in terms of Iron Man, I think so there's a degree of the usual arrogance that we see. I'm the smartest person in the room. Maybe that's why I don't want to speak to people, and maybe I expect opposition, so I'm not going to speak to people. And there's a number of... The thing I find interesting is that he doesn't ever seem to learn his lesson. So there was the Ultron, I'm doing something, I'm not going to consult people, it goes horribly wrong. And then he's like, okay, well, let's do it again. let's, let's do it again. And the even Bruce Banner's like, surely this is exactly the thing that we did last time. Maybe now's the time to do it. So it does make you wonder, in terms of growth, being smart and being gifted and being capable, is that blinding for him? Does just like you say, could there have been some sort of mitigation for something that probably seems inevitable when you think about the subject matter? If you just spoke to somebody, it made me want and think about the question. So you tell me what you think. People say it all the time: the end justifies the means. What do you think about that from a coaching point of view?
Well, I think the way different people learn in different ways.
Yeah.
So some people just have to learn through experience, and it's difficult to tell sometimes when certain people have had an adequate level of experience for them to change. It's an individual personal thing. But I think for Tony, after he's had the sort of the second experience with creating vision, you see in Civil War, that's the moment he's changed because of his decision to sign the Accords. And I think also like that emotional kind of attack that he receives from the mother of one of the children that dies in the accident. So yeah, I think he's very sort of single-minded in terms of the ends. And it's such that he doesn't consider the means and the ethics and what could go wrong. And those things are sort of secondary importance, because when he achieves his final end goal, it's going to kind of negate anything that's happened. So I think for him, he needs to kind of see it through to the end until he's like, okay, now I can process all the like horrendous stuff that happened because of the means that I used to get there.
Yeah, I wonder whether he's the kind. I mean, he's definitely asked for forgiveness rather than permission type person, and I think that there's a degree to which in life, to get things going, kind of having that kind mindset really does help. But I remember listening to Eric Thomas one time when he was talking about people who would say, "Yeah, but this is my nature and this and that." And he was like, but you can tone it down. Like let's say you meet a guy who is just street, he speaks in the bonnets and whatever. If you meet King Charles, you're not going to speak like that. I mean, I would hope you had the common sense to find a different way of communicating, because the setting requires it, and I think that for me, in terms of the end justifying the means, again, from a coaching point of view, my issue is, you still have to live with yourself. You still have to, once everything's done and dusted, you still have to have a good night's sleep and look at yourself in the mirror. And actually, this is one of the things when I'm talking to junior doctors, or resident doctors, about when I'm on a ward round now and saying, like, when we're talking about decision making, I'm like, I want you to develop a framework that helps you sleep well at night, and you can look at yourself in the mirror from an integrity point of view, because patients you're gonna see a million patients in your career, but you are only gonna be in your own skin, and you want to be able to be comfortable that, okay, I've done this thing, it was challenging or whatever, but the things I made go are decisions that are congruent with who I am, because I think sometimes from a coaching point of view, people want to do things or say things or go to, they're not necessarily being honest about the fact that it is at an odds with who they are deep down, So yeah, that's why at the end just moving on.
I think sometimes it can be a case that the strongest emotion that they're experiencing in the moment of making the decision kind of wins, and that sort of crowds out all of the other aspects of their character or morals and ethics and stuff. And I think that emotion that we're seeing here is fear. So Tony is just completely consumed by this fear of like everyone dying and the planet being invaded, people coming in through the wormhole that he's not in control of. Yeah. So it's really understandable what happens, and you can see that he's actually trying to do everyone a favor because he doesn't want the smoke of being a superhero, basically. He's like, okay, I've had enough of putting my life at risk. Yeah, but I still have like the tools and the brain to create a system so that everyone can just live like free and happy, and like I don't get blamed for the death of everyone on the planet. And it's like, that's great, but if you shared that with someone else, they would tell you that you're delusional
or you're being naive. Being naive.
So he's just like in this like very like single mind, like this is reality, this is truth, this is what's happening. I need to fix this. And being in a position of power, when you have that kind of mindset, is just very dangerous. And I think that Scarlet Witch, there's a scene where the Avengers have broken in to like get the spear, and she's going around like infecting everyone's mind, making them have these visions and fears, and she like senses how much fear there is in Tony, and she basically says like, okay, just let him take the spear, like he's gonna do something that's gonna like mess them all up, because he only cares about his own fear, and that's gonna like destroy the Avengers.
Absolutely. And I think, it's really important. Have you ever done this exercise of like the 5 whys, where like, so you might ask somebody, why do you want to do this, why do you want to start a business, and they give you an answer, and you say why. Then you give an answer and say why, and it's really like, if you do it correctly, you can get to the real core of why somebody's doing something. And for a lot of people, it's a real breakthrough. It's a bit like, in Inception, where they went a number of layers and they changed something small and it had massive implications in terms of their doing. So, like for instance, you're right. What Tony is doing might on the outside be looked at, oh, this is objectively a good thing. He wants to create an armor around the world and do something good. But the place it's coming from is not a good place. And he hasn't had the self-awareness to, okay, why, to get down to it. The actual issue is I'm scared. Or I'm scared and I don't want the responsibility of having to protect. I was living a life of a billionaire, philanthropist, playboy, whatever, and now I've got these skills that I don't want that anymore. So let me abdicate. So like he needs Uncle Ben from Spider-Man, who's a great responsibility. Great power comes great responsibility. He's very much like, I'm happy with the power, I don't want any responsibility, so let me abdicate the responsibility that I have with my power. So let me create an AI system which takes care of anything. I can go out to party in life. Because of the fact that I'm scared. And how many of us, and I'm sure, in your coaching setting, when you're speaking to somebody, the reason they give you is a service level reason. I want to do this because of that. Can you help me with this because of that? But actually, if we did the 5 layers of why do you want to start a business? Oh, because I want money. Why do you want money? Oh, because it's makes me feel secure. Why didn't you feel secure? Oh, because I grew up. And at the time, there were some trainers that I really needed, and I wasn't able to get them, and it really devastated me. Like, to get to that, because again, it's part of the congruence again. I know why I'm doing something, and actually, that is a thing that can help me with an impetus to achieve and not self-sabotage. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think when it comes to following a course and charting a path without running into trouble, having a strong sense of the underlying reason why you're doing something means that you can always kind of come back to that whenever you're at a difficult decision, questioning two choices, and choose the one that aligns best with that sort of core value that you have, and then appreciating the beliefs that you have around that core value. So in terms of whatever it is, you value security because you never felt safe growing up because you always had to go out and you didn't have enough food to eat or whatever. And those experiences in early years, they carry through, which is why it's good to reflect back and see what is the real reason that you're doing what you're doing, essentially.
Absolutely. So if Tony Stark came to at this stage in his life, came for some coaching, what do you think? What question do you think he'd be asking? Like, let's say, so this is before he creates Ultron. I suspect the question he'd be asking, let's see what your answer might be, is, Coach Lewis, I really see an arm around the world because it needs protecting. I'm going to do this. I know I'm with the Avengers, but forget them. Yeah, I think they're just going to slow me down. Help me, give me some motivation so I can get going forward. What would your response be if you were Iron Man's coach in that setting?
So if he was looking for, coaching around implementing this strategy, putting armor around the world, one of the first questions I would be asking is like, well, why do you want to do this? Why is this important? And I think it's a good way to do that 5 whys exercise you said, to get the underlying values and beliefs. But then the next part of that, which I feel is pertinent to Tony's situation, is asking, how is this going to help other people? How are other people going to benefit from this? Who needs to be involved in this? Like, what are the possible roadblocks or barriers? And just getting him to have a think about some of the areas that might be overshadowed by his determination to just get this done because of what he needs. It's like, what's fair to everyone else? Like, is this ethical? What do you need to make this happen? So the coaching process, I think, is just asking questions to raise his own self-awareness, because that's really, I think, what he's missing in order to make a decision that is the right, sensible decision to make. Not just like going in because he's like freaking out and scared and trying to pretend that he's in control. I mean, I think there's a real tension between so have you ever heard the phrase people say, success loves speed? Success what? Loves speed. Okay. I'm not. There is a psychological, forgive me, I forget what the principle is called, but the longer you take to decide whether you're going to do something or to make a decision, the less likely you are going to do it. So so there is a degree to which, because I always used to think about that, I would be in like these multi-level marketing meetings, and it would be about signing up for this and that, and they would say successful speed because they want people to sign up, and I always thought, whatever, you're just trying to sell me something. But actually I looked it up. There is a psychological process or a principle that talks about the longer you take to make a decision, the less likely you will actually follow through. So it's true, but there's a tension between that and not doing due diligence.
and doing everything that you need to get all the information that you need to be able to make an informed decision.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's any sort of definitive. It's probably going to be different for every person because it depends on yourself and your risk tolerance and your experience and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, Tony doesn't appear to have done any due diligence here.
Yeah.
It's very, I think it's a great idea. Let's go. Forget them. Let's move forward. So true. Let's say Tony now comes to you, and so he's created Ultron. Ultron's gone badly, and he's like, you know what? There's this body, and I think we can put my Psyche and a bit of Jarvis and a bit of Banner and maybe a bit of Stone, and and also I think we shouldn't speak to people again. So
what could go wrong?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So let's say this is now the second time he's book coaching with you. What do you say in that setting?
I'd be like, well, well done for acting on your intentions, but let's just try and learn from the results of what's happened.
Yeah.
And maybe think about what you can do differently this time to lead to a better result overall. Because again, it's the same kind of situation where he's in urgency mode, like survival mode. He is just not really thinking. He's thinking emotionally rather than like logically about the situation. And I think sometimes people can get in those situations where they've got a group of other people that they know are. It's like he doesn't want to waste time trying to get what's in his mind into their minds in a way that they can understand. So I think I would be trying to make him see the importance of doing that, not for their sake, but also for his sake.
For him. Exactly. Yeah.
Because when you're explaining something to someone else, that's actually the best way, teaching someone something. It's the best way of learning and getting a deeper appreciation of it. And he might have been like, perhaps I hadn't considered that. Yeah, let's put it open to the floor and get some ideas. But yeah, he's still very sort of single-minded and arrogant. I don't know. What do you think?
I think for me, the first question I would ask him is his opinion of the outcome of Ultron. Because I think sometimes in a haste or decision making or whatever, I know for myself there's been times when I can't slow down, because if I slow down and really consider, I know this is not a good idea. So sometimes I would ask him, because the other thing is that we've all got that friend who's got loads of ideas or whatever and may not be open to you offering them another way of thinking about it. Because if he's not in the framework of being able to say, okay, I did the thing with Ultron, it didn't go so well, and these are the things that I've learned from it. If it's very much like, okay, on to the next thing, is he even in a framework, isn't he even in a frame of mind to be able to take on doing exactly the same thing again? Might not be sensible. You might think it's a good thing. It's a very difficult thing, I think, and I think it's a plague of naturally gifted people. So when you're talking about have you ever talked about genius models or how to make them, logic boxing? So I did a bit of programming in my first degree, and one of the things that they talked about was, let's say the decision making of a GP or a decision making of a acute medicine consultant. If you would try to model that, this is before AI, by the way, model that, it's difficult because by the time you come to a GP and you become an expert, you're not really thinking about what you're doing, because it's now you're not using your RAM, if you will, if you're going to use computer speak. You've just got to the point of mastery. So you're not expending conscious effort doing the doing, because it's just there. So actually, you're right in that it is challenging for somebody who's got to the point of mastery to slow down and explain it to somebody else.
Yeah.
But it might be better. Like you say, you have the benefit of having other people's opinions to point out blind spots that you might not even have realized that you had. And, you know, hopefully Tony, I mean, if Tony had done that, who knows what would have happened if he'd opened it up for a discussion on the floor.
And it's also a way of him being able to see himself and appreciate himself. It's like he could present his ideas and people would be like, you're crazy. And obviously, like, that's something that can be used against people who are genuinely, you know, trying to do something worthwhile. But I guess it's just that openness to considering whether you're doing the right thing or not. And, you know, with the genius thing, like you said, it's very difficult to allow yourself to slow down. And it's also very difficult when he's already in like a heightened, aroused, intense state because of the disaster that's going on with Ultron. It's kind of like, oh, I've made one mistake, right? I need to like quickly fix it. And it's kind of like, I can't make it much worse because we're already in a bad situation. So whatever I do is, you know, is not going to make it any worse, but it could potentially make it better.
Yeah. But I mean, again, it speaks to what do people say? Never make important decisions when you're really happy, you know, or you're really angry, or you're really sad. So, like you say, a heightened emotional state, because I can't remember who I was speaking to, but we agreed on, like, sometimes in a situation there's a temptation just to do something. Yeah. And the doing something might actually be the wrong thing. Sometimes the right thing to do is just take a breath and do nothing and let things settle and just see. I'm not advocating that's what Tony should do. I'm just saying, in life, maybe the thing to do is let the chips land where they are to give you an opportunity to appropriately respond, even if it's just we've all been in situations where somebody's saying something to you, and rather than take the time, we react. And in hindsight, you think there was probably a way that I would have liked to respond that would be more reflective of who I am on the inside. But because of where I was emotionally, I reacted, and it didn't reflect my character. But just even in day-to-day life, when you have challenging situations, different conversations with colleagues, with family, or whatever, taking a breath and asking yourself, okay, how do I want to respond? You know, who knows whether Tony had said that? What difference it would have made.
So I have a question for you and for anyone watching to consider, which is, have you ever made a decision based on fear before you had clarity on the whole situation?
Yes. Yes. So I'm a locum consultant, and there was a hospital that I was working at where I'd been there for some time, and there'd been some challenging times at work. You know, other people, not me, might have described those challenging times as bullying and things like that. Things are happening to me, and it was tough. And I was in the process of doing some professional qualifications, and I came to myself and I realized I am not still here because I think this is a great place to work. I'm here because I'm scared to leave. And immediately I handed in my notice. I had nowhere else to go. But I'm like, the reason I'm here is because I'm scared to leave. I'm scared that can I do this job in a different setting? Because I've learned how to do this job here, and I've got a great support network, and I was, I knew how to do that hospital's way of doing things, but I was really worried what if I take the knowledge that I have and move to another setting? Am I going to be able to do it? And that was the fear that was keeping me in a situation where it wasn't a great working environment for me. Other people might have had great experiences. So yeah, I handed in my notice. My wife wasn't now. But yeah, so I can relate to that, yes.
So would you say the decision was to hand in your notice, or was the decision to stay that you'd been making continuously prior to that?
Because I think in the back of my mind for probably a couple of months, if not years, I had been like, this isn't great. But I was staying, and maybe I hadn't done my 5 levels of why. I was staying. I mean, there were other reasons I'm staying, because if I stay here and do the professional qualifications, I've got colleagues and they can help me sign stuff off and blah blah blah. But when it came down to brass tacks, when I came to myself, what I realized is the decision to stay that I have been making perpetually is because I'm scared. So I retrospectively realized that it was fear.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want my life to be limited by fear.
So I think that's so important to recognize, that decisions aren't always, a decision that you make to do something, to actively do something. Sometimes decisions are, doing nothing or staying the same, and, decisions that are just are passively that you're making without really thinking about it. And I feel like in coaching, that's what we deal with a lot, particularly with people that want to change careers. They're making a decision to not change career and to stay in the same place that doesn't, make them feel fulfilled and that they don't appreciate. But fear is just such a strong emotion that drives them to not be able to gain the clarity of the whole situation. And it's that clarity which is needed to actually make a decision that feels right, and that, leads to the world being saved, essentially. Just bringing it back to the superhero theme with Avengers, Age of Ultron.
So we've got a few people online. If you can tell us where you're listening from, and can any of you relate to what we're talking about in terms of fear-based decision making? Can you tell us where you're listening from, and have you had any experience with fear-based decision-making before we sign off? Because, we're always running over in these chats because we're having so much fun. While we're waiting for people, I think, for me, another way to look at the situation of the Age of Ultron is the law of polarity. So there's facts in life, and we give them a frame, and those things are positive, and they're both positive and negative. And it is up to me to give the fact meaning. So, for instance, Tony created Ultron, and ultimately created Vision. And it's interesting because they said, "Oh, Vision, are you on your side? Are you on our side?" And Vision was like, "I don't think it's that simple. I'm on the side of what's right."
Yeah.
And what was interesting, I think we do this in our life. We look at stuff and we look maybe retrospective at our choices of where we are right now, and we're like, "Oh, this thing happened to me, and it's bad," but we may not necessarily be realizing that I am giving it a meaning. Does that make sense? So Tony did whatever he did with Ultron, and I think there's because the good that came out of it was Vision. But obviously there was objectively bad things that happened, like people dying and stuff. But yeah, I think sometimes it's important for us to understand in life. So my own experience, I had a stroke in 2020. Somebody might be like, that's objectively bad. I'm at the point in my life where I'm grateful for this stroke, because where my life is now, I consider a good place, and I wouldn't be here, no question, if not for the struggle. So I wonder, for yourself, whether you can relate to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way we experience the world is, completely through how we perceive it, how we respond to, bad things happening. For me, I had a particularly rough week. I was in hospital for a couple of days, and I won't go into that. But obviously, I had issues with my health, and I could have been like wallowing in self-pity and depression, and that would have been valid, an automatic easy reaction to a negative situation. But I think in life it's all about positivity, and you can create your own experience of positivity by focusing on what you can control, which is the way you experience something. Yeah. So for me, I don't feel any need to really kind of dwell on the negative emotion that those experiences can cause. I'm aware of it, but I would much rather look on the bright side. It's a nice warm day, like the sun's out, and it's just it's life. It's not meant to be fair, and it's basically a game that you get to choose how you experience it. If you're like Tony and you like have all these visions of like negative bad things happening, people dying, it all being your fault, and you're just catastrophizing over and over again, that's exactly how you're going to experience life. That's what you're going to manifest in the world. But the way that you can actually sort of come out of that spiral is through gratitude. Like that's an easy exercise that you can do to force yourself to feel positivity. Like you can't feel grateful and feel negative at the same time. It's just impossible. And it's something that you can practice as an exercise, just like a bicep curl. Like you're just strengthening a muscle until it becomes automatic, so that you always are creating a level of positivity, and it just helps you bounce back, because bad things are always going to happen, and they happen to everyone. Everyone's fighting their own battle. You've had battles that you fought. I've had battles that I fought. There's no like, it's just me going through stuff. It's a universal thing, and we that's why we have to try and raise the vibrations and spread positivity and love, and make people feel good, so that they have the energy to bounce back and not sort of just wallow in self-pity. Sorry, I went on a bit of a rant there, but
no, I was going to say there's no better way of finishing off the podcast than that. So that's our time. Thank you for staying with us. Those of you who are listening live, and those of you listening on YouTube. If you are listening on YouTube, it would really help us if you would like this video, if you would subscribe to the channel, and if you would share this video with your friends. If you enjoyed the conversation, we really enjoy your feedback. So we're going to put the question that Lewis posed to me in the comments, and we'll see you in the comments. But I've been Dr. Ayo Olatoye,
and I'm Dr. Lewis Thomas. Thank you very much for joining us again.
Absolutely. And so we'll see you next week for our next 7th episode of Real Coaching. See you guys next time.
See you next time, guys.